the time has really come for us to undergo collectively a quantum leap.
People have asked me, so what's next? And I really believe it's this great listening.
How do you manage different people effectively?
What if we think of spirituality at work not as the answer, but as the question, or in philosophical terms, as the inquiry, which is the ongoing question?
Imagine that a decade from now that it'll be required that the CEOs of visionary and progressive companies will be spiritual leaders.
Some people like to try to understand how it is exactly I got to be where I am today, and I always tell them that it all started off in 7th grade gym class, where Jerry and I were the two slowest, fattest kids in the class, and the whole class would be running around the track, and then Jerry and I would be half a lap behind, and the coach would yell out, "Gentlemen, you got to run the mile in under 7 minutes. If you don't run in under 7 minutes, you're going to have to run it again." And Jerry would yell back, "But coach, if we don't run it in under 7 minutes the first time, we're certainly not going to run it in under 7 minutes the second time." And that's how we got to be good friends. So you know, neither one of us was getting anywhere with our lives. I had dropped out of 4 colleges, and Jerry had been rejected from 30 medical schools. And we finally realized that the only way we were ever going to make it in the world is if we ran our own business. And since the only thing we liked doing was eating, we thought we'd get into the bagel or ice cream business. And bagels, the equipment was too expensive, so we figured ice cream had to be cheaper, and that's how it happened. And our idea was to just open up a one-shop homemade ice cream parlor, and our plan was to run it for 2 or 3 years, sell it, and with the money we got from that, buy a tractor trailer. We opened up in Burlington, Vermont. The winters were so hard and cold that nobody was buying ice cream in the winter, and we were going down the tubes. And in a last-ditch effort to survive, we started to wholesale our ice cream to the local restaurants, and then in an effort to pay for the truck repairs that we were incurring delivering our ice cream to those restaurants, we got into selling pints of ice cream to grocery stores, and that's what turned the corner for our business. And that allowed us to get into an independent network of ice cream distributors around the country and sell our ice cream to them, and that's how the business expanded. About 3 or 4 years into the business, Jerry and I turned around and looked at each other one day and said, you know, what's going on here? We're not ice cream men anymore. We've become businessmen. We're not spending our time scooping ice cream and making ice cream. We're spending our time hiring and firing and dealing with accountants and lawyers and trying to balance the books. And you know, this was not our idea of a good time, and we felt like we were just becoming another part of the economic machine that tends to oppress a whole lot of people. And you know, our first reaction was to sell the business because we felt like we were involved in something that exploited the community and exploited its workers and exploited the environment. And then I ran into this old eccentric restaurateur down in Brattleboro, Vermont, who convinced me that the business was my baby and how could I possibly sell it, and it had so much potential ahead, and if there was something I didn't like about business, why didn't I just change it? And that hadn't occurred to me before, and so we decided to set out to conduct this experiment, to see if it was possible to to use this incredibly powerful tool of business as a way to help improve the quality of life for people as opposed to destroying the quality of life for people. And that's what started us on this 20-year odyssey. You know, we thought that essentially business is a machine for making money. And if what we want to do is to serve the community as much as possible, what we needed to do was give away as much money as possible. And so we started the Ben & Jerry's Foundation, which ended up getting 7.5% of our pre-tax profits, which was a very high amount compared to the corporate average of about 1.5%. And also we were at the stage in a business's life when it needs a cash infusion. It's the stage when you normally take an investment from venture capitalists, essentially a few well-to-do people who invest a lot of money. And our idea was that instead of going that route, what we would try to do was to use that need for cash as an opportunity to make the community the owners of the business. So that as the business prospered, the community would automatically prosper because they would be the shareholders. And the way we found to do that was to hold what became the first ever in-state Vermont public stock offering. So essentially we sold shares in Ben & Jerry's to Vermonters. We were trying to allow people from virtually all economic strata to be able to get in on this ground floor opportunity. And the accountants and the lawyers were all telling us we're crazy and it'll never work. And by the end of the offering, we sold it out, and 1 out of every 100 Vermont families had become an owner in Ben & Jerry's. We found that we were totally overwhelmed with grant requests from community-based organizations all over the country dealing with issues of basic human needs, health, hunger, housing, domestic abuse, poverty. And we could only fund about 5% of what was coming in. And we realized that every foundation in the country was in the same position, that there were so many overwhelming unmet human needs that even all the foundations put together could only fund a very small percentage of it. So we started to say, well, isn't there something more that our business could do aside from giving away money? And so we started looking inward, and we started with the definition of business. The usual definition of business is that business is an entity that produces a product or provides a service. At Ben & Jerry's, we started to define it differently. And we said that business is a combination of organized human energy plus money, which equals power. I would go so far as to say that business has now become the most powerful force in the country, in the world. I mean, that didn't always used to be the case. It really has only happened within my own lifetime. Originally, the most powerful force in the world was religion. And then the most powerful force in the world came to be government, nation states. And today, it's business. You can see that reality echoed in the buildings in the major cities around the world. And you see that the oldest big ornate building is a religious institution. The second oldest big ornate building is a governmental institution. And today, the big ornate buildings that are being built are commercial. Well, as that most powerful force, business controls the society. It controls our elections through campaign contributions. It controls our legislation through lobbying. It controls our media through ownership. And it controls the lives of everyday citizens as employees and customers. And all of that is done in the narrow self-interest of business without a concern for the welfare of society as a whole. And you know, that's the difference between business today being the most powerful force in the society versus those other two former most powerful forces. At least religion and government had as their purpose to improve the quality of life for people. But for business, that's never been part of its brief. Its brief has been solely maximize profit. And in that narrow-minded concern for maximizing profit alone, the unintentional byproduct of business has been destroying the society. What we came up with was that the issue is in how you measure success. That if the only way business is measuring its success is by profits, how much money is left over at the end of the year, that has been tremendously effective in terms of getting the whole organization focused on that one goal. But in so doing, they've had all these unintended negative consequences on the rest of society. And what we needed to do was to change the way we measured success at Ben & Jerry's. So that's exactly what we did. We redefined the bottom line, and we said that at Ben & Jerry's, we called all of our managers and the entire company, we called all of our workers and our managers together, and we said from now on, we're going to be changing the bottom line at our company, and we're going to measure our success in two parts. How much have we helped to improve the quality of life in the community, and how much have we improved profitability? And everybody, stood up and applauded. They were all really happy and went back and did their work. And a few months later, our managers came back to us and said, hey, that bit about, the two-part bottom line, it sounded really good, but we find that when we devote business time and energy and money and resources to improving the quality of life in the community, that takes away from time and money and resources available to improve profitability and vice versa. And we said, huh. And we thought about that for a while, and we realized that the solution to the dilemma is to choose those courses of action that have a positive effect on both parts of the bottom line. And I say that and you hear it, and it sounds like, oh yeah, nice idea, it just can't be done. I mean, it sounds like a disconnect. Well, what we discovered at Ben & Jerry's was that it's just a mindset, and that once you change your mindset, the opportunities for combining both parts of the bottom line are limitless. And I'll just give you a few examples. And, I need you to know that, in the process of developing these examples, there's been a bunch of failures along the way, and that is the nature of any innovative process. Some ways that we found to combine these two bottom lines were the following. For one, we were in the ice cream business. We needed a lot of milk and cream. We were located in a community in Vermont where family dairy farms, the backbone of the rural economy there, were going out of business at a record rate. So we made a commitment to buy 100% of our milk and cream from Vermont dairy farms in order to increase demand for Vermont dairy products and to help keep them in business. My experience has been that there is a spiritual aspect to business just as there is to the lives of individuals. As you give, you receive. As you help others, you're helped in return. As your business supports the community supports your business. The idea that there's a spiritual aspect to our lives is pretty well accepted by most Americans. But somehow all of a sudden when they join up together as a business, this idea of there being a spiritual aspect to a business, a conglomeration of individuals, goes out the window. I mean, business tends to only be concerned about those things that you can objectively measure. Well, the spiritual stuff cannot be objectively measured. And yet it is nonetheless still true. And I mean, the interesting paradox, I think, of all of our lives is that those things that are most important are the intangible things, and those are the things that can't be measured. And the nature of human beings is to focus their efforts on those things that are measurable. So we end up focusing most of our efforts on the less important things. So that is the current state of the journey.
Our minds, our bodies, our spirits, our earth. We all want to improve ourselves, our lives, and our world. Now, Wisdom Television shows you new ways to a happier, healthier, more fulfilled life. At home, at work, at play, around the world. Wisdom explores new ways of living that help you achieve a more balanced life. A better you. Embrace your life. Empower yourself. Enrich your world. Every day with Wisdom Television.
You have a task to perform. Do anything else, do any number of things. Occupy your time fully. And yet, if you do not do this task, all your time will have been wasted.
As I was reading the opening lines describing this conference, I read, "No longer will the bottom line alone define a business leader's success." I don't know that I think it ever did. A business leader's success has always been about his or her demonstration of leadership, ethics, and commitment, particularly to the people themselves. These have always been the important criteria. It's just taken corporations and other institutions a long time to get it. Today's leaders need to take into account the financial health, the environmental health, and the spiritual health of an organization. As well, these leaders' sense of responsibility to their businesses and themselves is changing, but changing very rapidly. Global diversity management speaks to these aspects of an organization that keep it vibrant, that keep it an exciting community, a place where people are stimulated and excited about growing into new areas rather than clinging to traditional models. How do you manage different people effectively? The old model was this: let's just keep hiring the same old guys. We already know how to do it very well. We're very good at it. We have really sound supply channel. We can get all that we want. And we can go on with that for a very long time. The new model is this: grow, change, progress, wake up. No matter what your problem is with respect to people, if you are having a difficulty dealing with someone because you are a racist, because you are a sexist, because you are a homophobe, your issue is difference. Your issue is learning to deal with difference and with change. Because he can't see, because she is Latina, because they are Islamic, it really doesn't matter. The issues that you have are with people and with differences in people. If you also consider a heightened human spirituality, some very clear intersections exist. Global diversity and human spirituality belong in the same sentence. They coexist. I believe today that global diversity is a euphemism for the new world market. And I am convinced, too, that the new world is increasingly and thankfully a spiritual world. Today, the benefits of being globally diverse can be quantified to include new market penetration, innovation, greater productivity, and faster and deeper growth. But the benefits go well beyond financial measures to encompass increased learning, increased creativity, increased flexibility, increased organizational growth, and of course, increased personal growth. I challenge corporations around the world to really think about how they will grow. When you have 400,000 or 500,000 or 600,000 people in your organization, given any type of turnover in an organization, which is a natural function of the way that we do things, how do you grow if you continue to go to the same sources? How will you grow if you are not able to think about alternative ways to find people that fit in your organization? I defy you to tell me that you can grow without diversity, without difference, without change. Forget your old notions defining diversity based on what someone looks like or where they were born. I believe that the essence of a new leader is to commit to his purpose and to have courage to carry it out. And I believe that an expanded spirituality would intensify both. I further believe that if corporations were able to commit to the very, very fundamental principles of fairness and respect, that most of the issues of global diversity would be mitigated. I'm going to just repeat that once because I want to make it as simplistic as possible. We're just talking about being fair and being respectful of people. If we could reduce it to simply those two words and presume that we have a leader who has the courage to see it through, then what we're talking about gets mitigated tremendously. Ultimate success, I believe, will be based on what we embrace, who we include, and how creative we can be. It will require a fundamental change in the attitudes and behaviors of organizational leadership. As we move into a more global culture, we are reaching toward a future in which we must change the issues of diversity and manage it with the business world with foresight and commitment to action. We must learn to appreciate diversity as a vital resource for growth and learning within the organization. The result is an improved ability to communicate and collaborate with fluency across socioeconomic, national, racial, religious, and gender lines. So to those of you in the audience who are yesterday's leaders, shame on you. You never posed the question. To those of you who woke up and realized you were today's leader, I've still got my fingers crossed. And to those of you who aspire to be leaders tomorrow, I offer you 3 words: fairness, respect, and courage. If you have all of those 3 things, God bless you. I wish I worked in your organization. If you don't, rest assured, you join many of us in this 21st century challenge. Thank you all very, very much.
Spirit exists, and we're all out in the world, and business is a major part of everyone's life. We have this opportunity to create intimacy and interact in a way that allows us to believe that we're actually just extensions of ourselves.